All right, everyone, we're going to get started here. Our next session is a three-parter. We have three individuals who will be presenting a kind of a shared format here with some problems that we're looking at and how we're trying to address these. Our first speaker will be Theresa Conley, coming from us online through Zoom, and she is a principal planner with the Oregon DOT. Theresa, are you ready to go?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I'll control your slides for you. Just give me a cue when you'd like to move on.
Excellent. Thank you. And I am sorry I can't be there in person, but happy to join you online. And it was great to get that little snapshot of everyone milling around in the audience. So I almost feel like I'm there. I'm here to share a little bit about a project that we've been working on for going on 2 years now, a multimodal inventory project to build out a system, a data set for cities within our MPO areas. So excited to share more about the project and hear your feedback. Again, I'm Theresa Conley with the Oregon Department of Transportation, and I'm leading up a team that is supporting implementation of changes to our state planning rules, and this project grew out of that. Next slide. So I'll give a more in-depth overview of the project, some key takeaways, a snapshot of what we're looking at for longer term maintenance of this data set, and then hopefully a little bit of time for discussion either after my presentation or at the end of the panel. Next slide. So for those of you who may be less familiar with Oregon's planning system, we function under statewide planning rules, and they were updated in 2022 to really take bigger strides towards achieving our climate and equity goals. And the changes to the rule were led by the Department of Land Conservation and Development and really focused on the MPO areas. Of course, the rules aren't prescribed to MPOs themselves, but so the rules are focused on cities within MPO areas and their urban growth boundaries. And the rules touch on a variety of ways to affect GHG emissions and our climate impacts. But this project really focused on transportation system plans and the requirement for increased data so we can assess which kind of projects will move the needle. And we heard pretty clearly from jurisdictions around the state, hey, help us out. This is a really big lift to produce this additional data, for example, sidewalk width and condition. Folks don't have that. And so this is a bit of an ambitious effort to produce this data at scale for the areas that are kind of starred on the screen. Overall, it covers about 48 jurisdictions. And of course, then there's a ripple effect of councils of governments and counties and other entities that are partnered up. That being said, while the jurisdictions must comply with the rules, they don't have to participate in this project. This is voluntary. We hope that the effort is valuable enough where people will participate in this first phase of data production and then the longer term collaboration. Next slide. So the focus of the project, and we really as a project team need to keep our blinders on, is to support transportation system plan development. And across the 48 jurisdictions. And to get there, we really need to focus on producing standardized data sets that still build on existing data. So that's been a bit of a challenge of how do we build on what's already there, especially if there's differences in geometry, for example, or attributes within the GIS data. And then we're documenting in a series of memos, of course, methodologies for data collection, processing, QA, QC. And as we've been moving along, we're focusing on, okay, how does this feed into our longer term decision making and which data and how we maintain it over the longer haul. Next slide. As I said, we are we're building on existing data first. And so trying to get that authoritative data set, whether it lives with public works or planning at each individual jurisdiction, and then doing a gaps analysis, seeing what is missing, and then filling in those gaps largely with AI. We're using Ecopia as a vendor and Vexel for the aerial imagery that the AI works on. And we're realizing it takes a lot of human power too. So the project team is then working with that combined data set, addressing known issues, of course, finding new issues, and we're verifying, we have in the contract QA/QC required for 1 to 5% of those AI derived data. Next slide. So these are the data layers that are required in rule. The ones in bold, we largely already have around the state. So we're definitely building on existing data. For roadways, for example, we're finding that E911 is a really reliable and upkept data set, but of course there are sensitivities about how we build on that. The data in italics is largely built off of AI. And then we have some that are not in bold that we largely have through GTFS work. And there's a couple under this relevant data section, key destinations, another item, land use context that we are creating a schema for, but we're having jurisdictions fill in. You know, it's not our role as in the state project to define what key destinations are for an individual city. So that'll happen in the local planning process. We are also gathering intersection points, so though it's not required in rule, it will inform level of traffic stress analysis in planning work. Next slide. So here is just a screenshot of the Ecopia data. You can see, I mean, it looks pretty good. So we have center lines of sidewalks, center lines of bike lanes, and you can see one of them is a shared road probably, and one has sharrows. There's dual lanes there. And then we have marked crossings in the dashed blue. If you look closely, like look at a couple things like how far the dashed crossings for the crosswalks go into the sidewalk. That's something we discovered early in our addressing. And yeah, so this is just a snapshot, and I'll dig into soon some of these issues that we found with the data. Next slide. So AI is definitely a starting point. The project team could not have done this at the scale that we're asking. So while the contract was written to be pretty broad in terms of the methods of data collection, they quickly pivoted to AI and computer-based methods. The data is not always responsive to local context, whether it be bike facility type or tree cover, and just how things are defined at the local level. And the bike facility type comes to mind a lot. There's also an end user license agreement. So there are limitations on how this data can be shared publicly. Most prominently, it cannot be shared for public download. It can be visualized, it can be shared as a raster, put on a web map. And significant input is still needed. So what I have on the screen here in the picture is this is a sidewalk in one segment, which covers 3 different streets. So this is one of the bigger fixes that we're working on is segmenting the sidewalk by the street face. The reason AI did this was because it just traced average sidewalk width. So if the average sidewalk width in this area was 5 feet, it just kept going until that changed. And then it created a new segment. Next slide. AI is definitely can't get to that qualitative side of things that we really need is to do the level of planning that we want. One thing that we've struggled with as a project team is sidewalk condition. The rules state that we need to define or identify sidewalk condition, but it's vague. It doesn't say what that is. And we realize, you know, we just can't, AI can't capture accessibility. It can't capture obstructions or uplift. And so for sidewalk condition, we had to create a proxy based on year built of adjacent structure and a rate of degradation. So that was a biggie for a big limitation with the data. Also, AI traces pavement markings. So if there is a bike lane next to parking, if there is just a local road without a marked center line, there's challenges there that our team had to go through and correct. The picture on the screen here highlights yet another issue, and that's with tree canopy. So this is Ladd's Edition in Portland. It's a beautiful tree-filled place with, you can see gaps in those purple lines. So our team, was identified quickly, and one of our core things that we're addressing. Next slide. I've already talked about this a little bit, The rules were written a few years ago through a really collaborative process with a lot of key partners at the table. A lot of work went into the rulemaking. But then when we get to this point of crunching the data and implementing the rules, you always run up against challenges, right? So bridging that gap has been a learning curve with this project. And I already talked a little bit about the sidewalk condition as an example of this. On the screen here, you have a little visual of what our attributes look like within the data, and this is for sidewalks. Next slide. I mentioned this earlier too. Some decisions we just need to leave for the local planning process and conversation, including land use context, key destinations. But then even bigger picture, we really need to meet jurisdictions where they're at, whether it be the capacity of their team. They might be a really small city that's captured within an MPO, a city of 2 folks, and they don't have GIS capacity. So we need to work within that framework and their flow of work. Folks have other things going on. Even though across the board, people are excited for this data, no cost, we're producing it for them. The data review, QA, QC still needs to fit into the local workflows. And then there are some attributes that, like I mentioned earlier, bicycle facility type, AI can't capture it. So we really need to be checking one-on-one. Did we get this right? Please, correct this part of the data. Next slide. And one thing that our team is really pivoting to focus on now is how do we ensure this is a down payment, not a one-time snapshot? And so engagement is so critical to really understand capacity, desire to maintain this data set and collaborate versus just maintain individual data sets. So we're really listening for which data layers and attributes are the most valuable, which bubble up to the top for us to really work on maintaining longer term. What are the easy ways to do that? For example, getting as-builts from developers and then just implementing a process to update sidewalks. And we understand this takes time, these conversations, especially when you can opt in or you can opt out. So that's something we're working on now. And we have some concepts for data management that we'll be working through our committees soon. Next slide. So longer term, of course, the core use case is transportation system plans consistent with the state planning rules. We are collecting level of traffic stress. We really hope that this can be used to track performance against performance measures and other planning work, safety planning. And these are just a few examples of potential use cases. Next slide. Oh, so for the longer term management approach, this is kind of our concept right now. It'll be collaborative. Local jurisdictions would maintain their own data. In some cases, this is new data like sidewalk crossings, sidewalks, center lanes for bike lanes. These are new in a lot of cases. So we're having those one-on-one conversations about, is this feasible to maintain? What would that look like? What would that update cycle be to provide your data to ODOT? And then we conflate at the statewide level and make it available. But that is the plan that we're working towards now. Next slide. All right, well, I guess that's me. This is a snapshot of our large consultant team. It's definitely taking everyone in the room to move forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Theresa. We will hold questions until after the other 2 speakers in the session are finished, if that's okay. And we'll do a Q&A at the very end. So next up, we have our Professor Dannenberg here at our very own University of Washington.
Well, thank you for including me in this, and I think it will fit fairly well with the talk we just heard. I'm Andy Dannenberg. I'm in public health. I'm actually a physician coming from the public health world, interested in urban planning, so I also have a faculty appointment in urban planning here at University of Washington. And I teach a class on health and built environment issues that gets into a whole range of how do you build the world around you to promote health. One of the topics that came up is, we want people able to walk and roll. We need sidewalks. How do you know where they are? And if a city has to decide where to spend some money to fix the sidewalks, you need some type of an inventory to know what's there and to figure out where the gaps are. So what I'll be talking about today is we surveyed a number of cities to see, well, what inventories are out there and how do they do it? And it's really quite a range of what different places do. So there we go. Sidewalks matter, as you all know. They're important to have networks of sidewalks. Sidewalks that don't connect anything aren't going to do you a whole lot of good. But there's really been relatively few reports out there that talk about the methods, uses, or costs of developing sidewalk inventories. And a lot of the projects that are out there look at technologies for specific use in specific places, but aren't necessarily designed to go to scale. So the methods we used, this was working with a public policy student at the Evans School, Aaron Cahan, and with Kate Kraft, who works for America's Walk, one of the pedestrian advocacy groups. We first did a literature review to see what is out there on sidewalk inventories, and then searched the internet to say what cities have sidewalk inventories that they have posted online so that we could look at them. We found about 120 inventories, so there's probably lots more that have it. They just don't all necessarily post it, or they mention they have one but don't actually post it for various reasons of privacy or security or whatever. But we found about 120 cities that had posted sidewalk inventories. So we looked through them and wanted to choose some that had a range of size and a range of geography and diversity in that range. We ended up picking 21 cities and got all the information we could off of their websites, and then called the Public Works Department for additional questions so that we could get kind of common information for all 21 cities. So here's the 21 cities. They range in size. It did include Seattle and Bellevue, some very small places like Lee's Summit, Missouri, and Mountain Brook, Alabama, and so forth, but really quite a range of different sizes, but purposely chosen to get some diversity of population size and geography. So the first question was, how did they do it? What types of methods were being used to get inventories? And it's quite a range of methods, many of which you should be familiar with from past work. It's everything from mobile LiDAR, where you're actually walking or riding with LiDAR devices, app-based collections, where you just walk every street and record it often on a tablet. Some were working primarily on satellite and GIS map-based systems. Some were doing paper-based, again, walking every street. The different methods have different costs, and they have different attributes that make them better or worse in terms of usefulness. So this is kind of the key slide of what some of these characteristics are for the different methods that we found. So field observers walking every sidewalk segment, usually with a tablet, is probably the best, but also it's going to be expensive. So it's accurate because you're looking at every street and every block. It's labor intensive because you got to go to look at every street and every block, and it's going to take a lot of time. A number of these were done. You hire some students, or you get even high school students who need a community project. I mean, a whole range, or you end up paying city staff to do it. So the costs will range tremendously by how you get the labor to actually do it. LiDAR is going to be a little more expensive because you have more devices, but it can be a little more efficient. It's going to be accurate. Some people would use a Segway. The LiDAR is going to be very accurate, and it's going to be a little easier to use than walking every block, and will take a little less time. So they're the two probably best accuracy of knowing what the information is that you really want to get. But when you don't have that much resource or time, the other methods are using, say, GIS and satellite data plus field observers. So you can start out with what you can get off of satellites, which is generally good, The satellite will give you good information. The field observers is how you ground truth it, because as I'm sure has been mentioned, that having trees in the way and so forth, satellites just can't see everything. It will vary a good bit by what communities you're in. That if you're out in a desert community like Phoenix where there's not a whole lot of trees, you'll probably do pretty well from a satellite. If you're in a northeast community or any city that has a fair number of trees, you're probably going to have a much harder time getting much on sidewalks. Less accurate but less labor intensive is strictly stick with the satellite data, and again it will depend on how good the satellite data is. And then probably the weakest is just to do some sampling of what network data is out there, gives you some information, but it's really not great. Okay, why are they particularly valuable to have the sidewalk inventories? And a lot of it has to do with equity. Can we have equitable sidewalk networks? How do we set some priorities for construction and maintenance of those sidewalks? What is typically done in most cities is the squeaky wheel gets attention, that they'll have 311 or equivalent calls. Whoever complains to the city is more likely to get it fixed than an equally bad place where nobody bothered to complain. And that clearly is not equity, because those who have the time and effort and knowledge to complain are probably a little bit better off than those who may be in a poorer area and don't have the time or knowledge that they can complain and get something fixed, or even have a low opinion it's going to get fixed so they do complain so they don't bother. The inventory really is central into identifying gaps, and particularly for ADA compliance. And what sidewalks do is they facilitate active transport. They let people get to places, so it's really important to have that information. So one thing we wanted to look at, what does it cost to do these sidewalk inventories? And so we asked the 20-something cities, what did it cost? And most of them had no good numbers for us. The 6 that could do it and that we could break down per mile was ranging sort of $80 to $800 per mile of road to do an inventory. And I've talked to a few other people since then who say, yeah, that's probably the ballpark. It has a very wide range as to whether are you simply doing a satellite information, are you actually walking every street, do you get some students who are volunteering for the experience, are you paying fully paid city workers to walk every street? So that price really does vary considerably, and some of the places use consultants, and consultants are not inexpensive, probably can do a very good job, but are probably toward the higher end of things. So we wanted to say, well, is that a lot of money? And so where we could, we got the public works budgets for those 6 cities and said, if you take the cost of their inventories and compare it to the budget of public works, for 5 out of the 6 of them, it was less than 1% of the public works budget. The 6th one was one where it was really hard to tell what was included and what wasn't, and may have had a lot of other things that we really couldn't use that data. But so for at least 5 out of 6 of them, the cost of an inventory, less than 1% of the public works budget, sounds like a pretty good bargain when you consider how much difference it can make in keeping a city equitable and accessible. Again, the costs varied a lot by which type of inventory, how much sidewalk was covered, the technology, and the labor being used. One of the central features we asked, why did you do the inventory? And ADA came up pretty much at the top of the list for almost all of them. And this was either because the city knew it was the right thing to do, or felt pressured by ADA. Either they had a lawsuit, so they had to get things fixed, or they were afraid of a lawsuit that would say you got to get them fixed. And from what we were able to understand, if a city gets sued under ADA for fixing its sidewalks, the city generally loses, and the city ends up having to fix it anyway. And so I think the city seemed fairly aware of that, and that they realized we got to fix sidewalks for ADA, and we want to avoid these lawsuits. So that was a key motivation, but still it's a local decision of what gets done and what doesn't get done. So some of the next steps would be ideally to develop a practical guide. What's the best way to do it? What obviously depends on time and resources and so forth to do it, to get a better sense of what some of those costs are. And ideally, just from the health point of view, it would be really good if we could get a way to estimate how much health benefit is obtained for each additional investment in sidewalk construction and repair. So I'll end there. We did publish this in the Transportation Research Record. The link is there. and I'll be happy to take questions when we get to the question time. So, thank you.
Thanks again, Professor Dannenberg, and I apologize for not having your bio on hand there at the beginning. Next up, we have Jacob Armstrong, King County Metro Senior Planner.
Yep.
And we'll be talking about some of the work you've been doing with the digital
Let me
walk
pull
audit
this
tool.
up real quick.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Armstrong. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a senior planner at King County Metro, and I've had the pleasure of working with the Taskar Center for Accessible Technology on the development of a digital walk audit tool. This is really an opportunity for project identification, fieldwork standardization, and better internal King County Metro coordination. Before I get started, I want to give a huge shout out to Taskar Center. It's been absolutely fantastic working with this team. A lot of faces in this room I only see over Zoom. Anat, Ryan, Sai, huge thank you. It's fantastic working with you. And you're truly leaders in this space in terms of advancing accessibility through open source data sharing as well as technology solutions. So thank you very much. And so, like I said, I'm on the Connecting and Transit team at King County Metro. This is a picture of my fellow teammates. Shanae is here to support me. Thank you, Shanae. As well as Brian Van Abeva in the back, who's technically not on our team but provides a lot of technical support for our team, has had a huge role in the development of the digital walkout tool. Our team has a few different responsibilities. We're responsible and charged with managing nearly 80 parking rides throughout the county through our parking management program, present and future. We're responsible for launching our Budding Mobility Hubs program, for managing bike parking at some of our transit centers and parking rides, as well as Safe Routes to Transit. Safe Routes to Transit is probably the work that's most closely linked to the digital walk audit tool, and that's where King County Metro is providing capital outlay, investment, funding, and subject matter expertise for the development of transportation access safety projects near our transit facilities. King County Metro is maybe a little bit unique in terms of access projects because we don't own most of the land that we're investing in. King County has some unincorporated areas that we manage, like White Center or Skyway, but most of the land is owned by our jurisdictions, our cities, our partners, and so a lot of our work is identifying those locations that we want to invest into near our transit facilities. And so before I talk about the digital walkout tool, I want to talk a little bit about the work that predated it and really led to the development of the tool itself, and that was the Health Through Housing Pedestrian Access Mapping Project. And so King County has an initiative to partner with local cities to provide up to 1,600 units of supportive housing to our unhoused population. As a part of this program, we have a transportation access program, which is led by our colleague, Nicholas Abel. There's a little picture of him there on the right. And a part of this transportation access program, the work that Nick does for that program is really providing transportation mobility supports for people, for residents in that housing. And so some of the activities he engages in is, one, dispatching and working with community transportation navigators at these sites. Those are members and people who are really integrated and embedded within those communities that could provide some structural supports around helping residents understand what their transportation and mobility options are at those facilities. He also provides direct transportation resources, whether that's subsidized or free ORCA cards, and more recently rolling out our pilot Universal Basic Mobility Program, which is essentially a monthly allowance for folks that have a little bit more freedom in terms of how they get around those sites beyond just using our buses. And then finally, what's most closely linked to what I'm talking about today is his pedestrian access mapping effort, which was another partnership with the Taskar Center for Accessible Technology. This is a multi-pronged approach to really understanding accessibility around these sites. Something I didn't say about the sites already is a lot of these sites are repurposed motels. And as you may know, motels may not always have the best transportation access, certainly not to our transit network. So a lot of this work was understanding, okay, what does it actually mean for our residents to get around to their important community destinations and services? And so one of the first things that they did with the Taskar Center was conduct site interviews. So actually interviewing residents and understanding where are the locations that are important to you around this site? Where's the hospital? Where's the grocery store? Where are these locations that we don't know and we don't want to assume they're important to you or not important? And also, where are their barriers? Where are you experiencing barriers when you're trying to get to these locations from one of your residencies? The next step was also creating an accessibility gap analysis. and that was to understand, using the Open Sidewalks Network, where is there a gap between the walkshed of able-bodied adult and someone who's using a mobility device? And that's what's shown on the screen now. And pink is representing how far an able-bodied adult could get in a 10-minute walkshed. And then the yellow lines represent how far someone using a mobility device could get using that same 10-minute period. And I think it's pretty obvious just from this one screenshot of one of the locations that there's a pretty significant difference. And that could be for a multitude of factors. It could be the slope, the existence or non-existence of curb ramps, the condition of sidewalks or absence of sidewalks. And this is really useful for us to know when we're thinking about these sites, where are these sticking points that are preventing people using mobility devices from having the full opportunity of their walkshed. And so the last thing that came out of that effort was the Aviv Scout Route tool. This is development of an existing application with the Health Through Housing program, or through the Taskar Center with the Health Through Housing program, to develop a quest-based walk audit tool. And there's screenshots on the right here of the slides that show at that time what the application looked like. And the way it works is once you are near one of the sites, there's pre-populated quests. It's GPS tracked, and when you're en route and you're close to a quest, you could select the quest and show on the right-hand part of the screen, the far right, you're prompted with questions based on the type of quest. Some of the questions could be, are there obstructions on the sidewalk? Are there big cracks on the sidewalk? Are there curb ramps? What's the condition of the crossing? All things that are important to understand accessibility of the built environment, especially for folks who are using a mobility device. And so our team, Connecting to Transit, had the opportunity to try out this tool when we visited one of the sites. And for us, we really saw this as a great opportunity for our own safe routes to transit planning work with some adaptations and with maybe a couple additional features. It could be really important for what we do. So we went back to work, went back to our offices at King Street, and we started thinking about how we could start a partnership with the Taskar Center. And before we started, we realized, hey, we're not the only capital planning team at Metro. There's a lot of teams at King County Metro that are looking at the built environment, that need to go out and take notes, do field work, check the condition of the roads, the traffic signals. And to be honest, we're pretty siloed. The county is a large organization, and capital planning groups are spread out throughout the organization in different sections, sometimes even in different divisions. And so everyone's going out with their own charge, whether it's transit route facilities looking at bus stops or speed and reliability, looking at the mobility of the buses themselves, and looking at the built environment, taking notes that's important for their group, and we're not necessarily sharing them in a really efficient manner. And so we saw this as another opportunity for us to break down those silos between our teams and create better coordination. And so what is the tool itself? This is another partnership with the Taskar Center for Accessibility Technology, building on the existing partnership through Health Through Housing. And the goal is to develop a flexible app-based fieldwork tool that could be utilized by different capital planning groups at King County Metro. It's building upon the existing Aviv Scout Route application. We're not starting from scratch. And some of the key features we want are new quest forms, new questions that are specific to the needs of our capital planning teams that help us identify and build new projects, as well as adding new features like adding quests or taking photos. Some of the core benefits I already mentioned, breaking down some of our internal silos, and then also standardizing fieldwork data collection. When we gathered some of the internal subject matter experts, what we heard from them was, of course, we don't have standardized fieldwork data collection methods across our teams, but for some of the teams, they didn't even have standardized fieldwork methods within their team. And so different members of their team are going out and doing things differently from one another. And so some inconsistencies in the way we were collecting data. And then finally, really important for our group was access project identification. Like I noted before, our team doesn't own a lot of land, and we're really relying often on some of our jurisdictional partners. And up until this point, we haven't had a great way of doing existing conditions analysis and better understanding on a broad county-wide level how we're investing some of our funds. And so one of the first things that we did was we gathered some of our internal subject matter experts, representatives from those capital planning teams. I see some of those folks here today. Thank you for joining. And we had a great conversation about all the different data needs of those teams. What are the things that you would need to make your work go fantastically? And of course, everyone had lots and lots of data needs. We could have made a table that was 100 rows long because we're all planners and we love our data. But what the TaskR team did was distill that information and build tables for each of those subject matter experts to review and kind of prioritize, okay, what's actually important for you when you're in the field? Because when you're in the field taking notes or you're using this application, you're not going to want to answer 100 questions about the built environment. That's not necessarily feasible. The activity that we engaged in was developing a consolidated list for subject matter experts to review. And so the default is that everyone has their own list, questions that are specific for their team's work. But I think the dream would be is if we could have one consolidated list, and so quests that could answer the questions that would satisfy the needs for all the teams. And one thing I wanted to mention here is an early application of the digital walkout tool. This is something that was unexpected when we set out on the project, but that was through a high school intern walk audit. And so King County Metro has a high school internship program. It's a summer program led by Rachel DeCorbita, and it's a really fantastic experiential program where we have high school students go out, learn about our bus spaces, about our facilities. They get to watch shelters be made. They get to see the front sides of buses broken open and repaired. They get to ride the water taxi. Honestly, I wish I was a part of this internship program. And they get to also define a bit of what they want to see in the program. And this year, the program manager reached out to our team because they wanted to learn more about the walkability and bikeability of their built environment and how that relates to transit planning. And so we thought this would be a great opportunity to test out the tool in a real-world application for the purposes of education. And so working with the TaskR Center, we developed new quest forms that are appropriate for a high school audience, and we did a walk audit. And so we walked from Wren High School, and we broke up into 3 different groups, taking different pathways. The red line represents a route that is along a busy corridor. I think it's maybe a 4 or 6 lane arterial, lots of traffic, skinny sidewalks, not a very pleasant walking environment. The middle purple line represents a pathway that's interrupted by a railroad, and so incomplete network. And then finally, the green line represents a beautiful tree-lined boulevard. And so we had the 3 groups split up, take notes, use the application, use checklists if they didn't have access to a phone, and then regroup and talk about their experiences on these routes. And I think it was really powerful for the students to reflect on how important the built environment was for their everyday experiences around their high school. And so where are we today with the development of the tool? We've been making great progress. So this is the current form of the application of the Aviv Scott route tool. We now have quest forms for each Metro team. We have a consolidated form, and then we've added new quest types as well. And so we have curb ramps, crossings, pathways, added bus stops and traffic signals as well, including photo taking capabilities. And so on the right, you could see a specific bus stop quest asking a very specific ADA question that's absolutely paramount to that group, which is there a 5x8 boarding area present at this bus stop flag? This is a federal ADA requirement that Metro must follow for the application of any new bus stop. Another thing the TaskR Center has been developing for King County Metro is a leaderboard. And so this is a platform for us to track fieldwork data collection across the different groups or even within those groups. And some of the key filters include the location of that fieldwork, the project groups, if this is assigned to a specific project or corridor, which will certainly be the case for King County Metro, as well as time range. And then finally, I want to share what's next. We are not quite done, but we're pretty far along this project. We are going to do one final round of quest form refinement with our internal subject matter experts to work out some of the kinks in those questions now that they're fully integrated into the app. And then we'll be doing fieldwork testing, hopefully in spring or summer, hoping for some good weather to get out there and test this on one of our project sites. And so maybe looking at one of our corridor projects and using this application to understand the built environment and really ground truth this tool as an application that we could use in our work moving forward. We'll also be working on developing an internal geodatabase. And so I think the dream for us is, at the end of the day, once we set up this platform with TaskR Center, we start collecting data that we could ultimately store it within an interactive web map for all the capital planning groups and anyone else really to access. Especially for folks that may not be more technically minded and can't handle GeoJSON files or APIs. And then finally, creating a strong linkage to the Safe Routes to Transit existing conditions analysis. There's a planning effort that our team's going to undertake this year to really set the foundation for our Safe Routes to Transit program. And we're going to be linking that conditions analysis directly to the quest form questions that we'll be including within this application. And that's my presentation. I realize now I probably should have added my contact information, but thanks for listening.
So we're going to do our Q&A session now with our panelists. And we'll wait for Theresa to join back up here.
Okay. Anyway, this isn't so much a question as a comment because you said something, and I said, I don't think King County pays enough attention to this. Light rail's great. I can't use the parking garages. The ceilings are too low. And I was telling the county this before they built the one in Redmond. I live in downtown Redmond. It's an 8'2" ceiling. I'm an 8'3" van. And there is no backup plan for that. There's no street parking. There is nothing near the rail line where I can park, which makes using the train in Redmond difficult, to say the least. The only comment I have is county doesn't pay any attention to when I talk about sidewalks that have fallen apart at transit stations. There's one in Redmond that hasn't been fixed in years. The city of Redmond said, well, you got to talk to the county, blah, 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 blah. So I don't know how to report things and actually get attention paid to it.
Great. I'm sorry, could you repeat your name one more time? Brian, thank you for your comment. I wish I could say there was something we would do about the parking garages. Unfortunately, it's unlikely that we'll raise the ceiling on those.
Better ones in the future.
Absolutely. And I think, in terms of an agency, I think part of our strategy is actually moving away from big investments into parking like parking garages and rather thinking of ways that we can get people to and from our facilities using mobility options, whether that's Metro Flex or better transit service or active transportation or better access improvements around those facilities. And then to answer your second comment, I think you could take down my contact information after this, and I would love to chase down that issue. But for everyone else, Metro has a C3 system where you could provide public comments, and then internally those comments are sorted and sent to the appropriate planning teams or operational teams who are responsible for that. And so if it was an access or a park and ride problem, that would get sorted back to our group, and we would work at identifying a solution.
The one point about the garages and kind of doing away with it, I live on the edge of the built-up area, so anyone further out than me is going to be to a parking. I live on. There's no solution to picking me up either because I'm too steep to go on the bus forever.
And just to be clear, we're not getting rid of any garages. I think that we just want to divert some of our focus towards improving mobility options for everyone, even including folks who aren't driving.
Hi, I'm Taryn Farley. I'm the ADA and Universal Access Manager over at Metro. So all things accessibility, everywhere the light touches, as Mufasa says in The Lion King, is what we do. Anyway, this is just to build off of what Jacob was saying and to build just a little bit of a response because I work closely with Jacob and his team, a little bit of a response to Brian. This is the importance of getting cities and ADA Title II entities to do transition plans. They are a pain in the butt. They take a lot of time and resources, but we should have a place to document where we're falling short of those things are like on and off. Hello, hey. And not just Title II entities doing ADA transition plans. King County Metro just finalized our transition plan, our very first transition plan, 2025. Hey-o. Thank you. But the importance of transition planning is to make sure that there is an accountability document with prioritization and plans for providing alternate accessible routes, pathways, whatever, right? So if there's not enough accessible van parking in a parking garage, we need to have documentation to have an alternative. and stuff like that. So anyway, this is just my plug for transition planning. I'm a huge transition planner, and anyone who wants to talk to me about transition planning, come talk to me.
Hello, Thomas Craig, transportation planner with the Washington State Department of Transportation. Two quick questions for Theresa and one for Andy. Theresa, could you speak a little bit to the cost of your effort and also the licensing long term? You mentioned that you can't like share downloads, but also that you're planning to build and maintain on top of that data. So I'm just wondering, like, how does the licensing work long term? And then also, I'll just say, quick question for Andy. After that, like, did you look at the spread of data, and in particular, like small cities? Like, how common is that data? Thanks. Go for it, Theresa.
Hi, Thomas. Good to see you. It's been a while since we were in the transit realm together. So the overall project cost is around the 3 million mark. It's a really big lift. And related to the end user license agreement, I'm trying to recall your full question. We do plan to conflate the local data sets at a statewide level, maybe once or twice a year, the proposal, and post them on a web map as rebased pilot. And it's my understanding we can create some sidewalls as to what is downloadable, what is not. There may be some technical nuances around that the EULA doesn't address. We understand in talking with Ecopia that there is no sunset date for that EULA. We're hopeful that there will be once the technology matures. But we did ask that question very pointedly and get it in writing. And I think there was another part of your question that I maybe didn't touch on yet.
You covered it. Next question was for Andy. Thank you. Thanks, Theresa.
Yeah, good question about, is that working? About small cities. We really have to say we did a sample of convenience. We started with those who had something online, and we purposely tried to get some large and small cities. If you look at the paper, you'll see which small cities and so forth we got. I think the real answer to your question is yes, it's very variable what small and large cities can do in terms of resources. Some may be, one person or no people and some consultants or whatever, ranging up to, major cities that have entire staffs that can do it. So it's quite variable, and we would not at all claim that we were representative. We took what we could find on the web and tried to get some diversity in that.
Thank you all for your lovely presentations. Listening to all three of these, I could not help but think of our first presenter. And I know that a lot of what you were talking about had to do with consistency of data. But is there a world where your entities would partner with private companies who are already collecting really rich data on sidewalk quality to, bolster?
I would say that's possible, and would really vary by what information is out there and what kind of monies that costs. I think anywhere they use consultants or get outside, your prices are going to be higher than what you can do with, high school students. It was great to see that in there. They can collect a lot of data less expensively. But yeah, there certainly is a role for private companies, but probably that adds some costs.
Matthew Wider, King County Metro again. Question for Theresa and the gentleman from UW. I forgot your name for a second. I was wondering if you could talk about how these methods and what you're doing currently compare to what governments have deployed to maintain roadway infrastructure. I mean, we've developed these systems over time to maintain really good data about that, and there's lots of actors in the market. And I'm just wondering, where are we with sidewalk data collection versus what is already in place and what is already working for DOTs across the country, and what are the costs of maintaining that data?
Quick answer is, my sense is that most places give highways priority and have invested more in having the information they need for building and repairing them, and that sidewalks are almost an afterthought in some places. Other places take them more seriously and have invested more in it.
Yes, I wouldn't disagree. And there are definitely technologies out, little carts or robots that can get sidewalk condition. For this effort, we just couldn't do it at scale. I'm hopeful for this next round of data upkeep, we can be more open-minded about our methods and our sources. For this first round, we heard pretty clearly we had to use local authoritative data. We couldn't use open source data, but hopefully as people look at the price tag, we can get more creative with solutions as long as we stick to the same standard. And that standardization, I think, will be important moving forward too. And I know there are folks working on the GADIS method to standardize things a little bit. But our project just wasn't quite synced up timing wise to utilize that.
A follow-up is, do we have an idea of how much we're investing in data collection for these roadways? Does anybody have that number?
I do want to mention, I was glad to hear AI mentioned, because I think down the road the technology could make inventories easier. I can imagine a little robot governed by AI, able to see what's out there, able to do sidewalk condition, that could do the whole thing a lot cheaper. And I don't know, some of that may already be going on. It's not at scale yet, but I think that potential is there to bring the cost down with an AI-enabled robot.
Okay.
Last question, sorry.
Thank you. Mary DeBose, ADA Asset Data Manager for the Washington State Department of Transportation. My question is for Theresa, and I was wondering if the ODOT ADA asset inspection, like the curb ramp inspection forms, does that data tie into or feed into the inventory that you presented on at all?
No, so the rules do not require accessibility for the baseline infrastructure assessment for a transportation system plan. And we really kept our sandbox to what's required in rules. So the one requirement is accessibility of transit stops. Recognize this, that being said, there's so much that's missing, right? That's needed for good planning. We have created attribute fields for ramps and sidewalk accessibility. I believe they're null at this point. So if a jurisdiction or ODOT has that information, we can put it in. I mean, this is definitely one area we would not use a proxy for. If we can't put the data in full confidence, we're leaving it null.
All right. I apologize, we're at time. I'm happy to see so many questions. Maybe we can, I know Jacob has to leave, but maybe we can find Professor Dannenberg or Theresa during the break for lunch. Pardon me?
If folks are okay pushing 10 minutes into lunch,
Do we want to push 10 minutes into lunch? Okay, I hear a consensus that we do. We can take 2 more questions. 1, 2.
Thank you. This is a question for Andy. My name is Alex O'Reilly. I am with the King County Mobility Coalition and the Seattle King County Aging and Disability Advisory Council. And so I was intrigued by one of your comments, I think it was one of your last slides, about looking at the health benefits gained, data on that from having accessible sidewalks, et cetera. And I'm wondering if you, since I think one of the departments in which you work here at the university is definitely health promotion, is there any efforts right now, are there any efforts right now in trying to look for ways to develop that kind of data? Because I think it would go a long way in terms of making the case for both funding and planning purposes to furthering that kind of development. So thank you.
No, very good question. I'm going to have to say I am not aware of any work going on directly looking at the health benefits of better sidewalks. It's obvious it's there. We can say that it's there, but the actually trying to measure it or try to show this much more investment gives you this much more benefit. I'd love to see that done, but I'm not aware of any of that going on.
The other thing that we talked about briefly here at our table was the fact that, for example, what would be the cost, this is not promotion, but cost of people who are falling because of these kinds of impediments to them getting around, for example. So that might be another angle in which to look at how these kinds of efforts can be more I guess you'd say, promoted within the county. For example, I know Seattle, King County Public Health does very extensive work in, collecting data, of course. Communities Count, Social and Health Services across King County. This kind of data is not part of what they're collecting right now, but they're always looking for new ways or new things that need to be collected in some way to help give planners opportunities and ideas of how to do planning. So that's the only one it's not the same thing, but it's actually related.
That's a good idea to look at costs of falls among other health benefits. More physical activity has benefits. One way to look at that might be relatively inexpensive is how many lawsuits had to be settled with cities because of falls of things that should have been fixed. And if somebody could pull together those numbers, you probably get a fairly high number that would encourage cities to be a little more proactive in fixing bad sidewalks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, again, Taryn, King County Metro ADA and Universal Access Program. I love all of the work that's going into gathering data, and a lot of the conversation is how do we get better data about things. But the question I have is, what are the conversations about how we prioritize that data for the remediation and improvement planning of our findings, right? Are you all having discussions or working on a way to matrix those prioritizations or coming up with prioritization criteria that's aligned with the data that's gathering so actions can be taken and recommendations can be made to make improvements?
Very good question. I think, and cannot speak for the 20-something communities, at least some of them are using them very specifically for where are the gaps and what needs fixing. And so what priority rules they use, I do not know. I assume they probably have some, but I think one of the biggest values of inventories is being able to figure out where the gaps are and then figure out something of where do we set priorities from that information once it's in front of you. But good question.
I'll share for King County Metro, we absolutely are planning on doing that. I mentioned at the end of my presentation that we're going to be building this tool into our existing conditions analysis, and that's really just kind of the lead way into our Safe Routes to Transit implementation guide, which will be pairing fairly recognized safety countermeasures with safety crash hotspots, an equity analysis, and a community engagement effort. So we certainly plan on acting on what we're learning from all this data.
And just add one little thing. It's one reason the quality of the data matters, that if I just do satellite data and I'm missing some things with where the trees were covering, I really can't say where the biggest gaps are. I need that on the ground, block by block information to say, here's my highest priority.
We gave ourselves time for one more. Is there anything from online? Any questions online? I'm looking at the perimeter of the room now. I know we kind of answered this middle section quite a bit. Down over here?
I wanted to compliment Oregon. I saw something down there I haven't seen anywhere else, and that is a two-tiered disabled parking system where the van spaces are set aside for vans. In the general public, I know they always think that's the case until they get a tag and then everybody fills up the van space. Consequently, I end up at the back of the parking lot. But down in Oregon, it works out. So I would love to see that promoted to other areas.
Last one then.
So question for Jacob. If other transit agencies wanted to leverage this app, go on, make their own quests, is this something they could kind of just copy off the shelf and gather similar data, or would they have to kind of reinvent the wheel?
I don't think they would have to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to speak for ODOT, but I'm guessing that should be open to sharing this tool with other agencies once it's developed. And I think a lot of what we're looking for is universal for a lot of teams that are doing similar work, other transit agencies. There might be some stuff that's specific to King County Metro, but a lot of the information could be plug and play.
right next to you is the person who pushes these quests to Git, and they are world shared. And so we did make it so that any agency can pull down forms that are openly shared and can reuse them, change the wording, change the images that are shown as examples for the different quests. So, very good. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank our speakers once again. Thank you, Theresa.